For 200 years they fed you a carefully constructed lie and called it history. They told you humanity began in a garden, with a single man molded from clay, and they expected you to never ask what came before. But tonight, that wall of silence crumbles. Helena Blavatsky, the woman who broke into the most guarded vaults of ancient knowledge, left behind a dossier so dangerous that secret societies, religious institutions, and shadowy governments have spent over a century trying to bury it. This dossier reveals 3 human races that walked this earth long before Adam ever drew breath. 3 civilizations so advanced, so spiritually powerful, that their very memory was erased from our collective consciousness. Not by accident, by design. And if you clicked on this video, if something in that title pulled you here like an invisible thread, then you are not here by chance. You are here because a part of you already knows. A part of you has always known that the story they told you was incomplete, that there are chapters missing from the book of humanity. Tonight, we open those forbidden pages together. Tonight, you remember. The secret begins with a question so simple that most people never think to ask it. If the Earth is billions of years old, as science now confirms, and if conscious beings have walked this planet for millions of years in various forms, then why does recorded history only stretch back a few thousand years? Think about that for a moment. Millions of years of existence compressed into a few thousand years of memory. Where did everything else go? This is not an accident. This is the greatest cover-up in the history of existence. Helena Blavatsky called it the doctrine of the root races. She claimed that humanity did not emerge once, but has emerged multiple times across vast cycles of time. Each root race, as she called them, represented a different stage of spiritual evolution, a different experiment in consciousness taking physical form. And here is where it gets truly disturbing. According to the classified records she accessed through ancient manuscripts, through direct transmission from hidden masters, through what she called the Akashic records themselves, 3 of these races existed and fell before the Adam story even begins. They were erased not just from books, but from the fabric of human memory itself. A planetary amnesia was induced, and the forces that induced it are still in power today. They sit in the halls of academia, deciding what you are allowed to know. They occupy the thrones of religious institutions, telling you how to interpret the divine. They control the flow of information through every screen you own, and their greatest fear is that you will remember what they made you forget. The first race that Blavatsky's dossier reveals were called the Polarians, but do not imagine physical beings walking around as you and I do now. The Polarians existed before matter, as we know it had fully crystallized. They were consciousness without density, pure thought forms inhabiting a Earth that was still more energy than substance. Imagine beings made of intention itself, existing in a realm where the boundary between mind and reality had not yet hardened. They did not think about creating. They simply created. Their thoughts became immediate manifestations. There was no gap between imagination and reality, because reality was imagination. They existed in what Blavatsky described as the first solidification of spirit into a planetary experience. The Earth was their canvas, and consciousness was their medium. Now here is what they do not want you to understand. You carry the genetic memory of the Polarians within you. Every time you visualize something, and it manifests in your life, every time you think of someone and they call, every time you create something from nothing, you are accessing Polarian consciousness. This is not fantasy. This is your inheritance, an inheritance they taught you to doubt, to rationalize away, to call coincidence. But there are no coincidences. There is only memory buried so deep that it feels like magic when it surfaces. The Polarians did not die. They evolved. They transformed. And a piece of their pure creative consciousness lives in every human being alive today, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be reclaimed. Before I go deeper into what happened to the Polarians and how their fall connects to everything happening in the world right now, I need to know something. I need to know how far this message is reaching. So do something for me. Drop a comment right now telling me what city you are watching from. Let me see how many souls across this planet are tuning into this frequency tonight. And if this is already resonating with something deep inside you, if you can feel that stirring of ancient memory, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what I am about to reveal in the next few minutes will change how you understand your entire existence. This channel is building a community of awakened souls. Do not let the algorithm bury this. Subscribe now and let us continue. The Polarians existed in a state of unity consciousness that is almost impossible for our modern minds to comprehend. There was no sense of I versus you, no separation between self and other. They were like drops of water in an ocean that had not yet learned they were drops. But consciousness by its very nature seeks experience, and experience requires contrast. Light only knows itself through shadow. Joy only knows itself through sorrow. Unity only knows itself through separation. And so began the first great descent. The Polarians did not fall through sin as the religious institutions would have you believe. They fell through desire. Desire for experience, desire for individuality, desire to know themselves as distinct points of awareness rather than an undifferentiated whole. This is crucial to understand because the forces that control the narrative of this planet have twisted the story of the fall into a tale of punishment, of original sin, of humanity being cursed for seeking knowledge. This is the inversion. The truth is that consciousness chose to descend, chose to fragment, chose to experience limitation as part of a vast cosmic experiment. The Polarians did not fail. They evolved into something new. They became denser, more individuated, more capable of complex experience. And in doing so, they laid the foundation for the second root race. But here is what the hidden controllers do not want you to know. This process of descent, of increasing density, of forgetting our original unity, it was always meant to be temporary. We were supposed to descend and then ascend, to fragment and then reunite, to forget and then remember. But something intervened, something that wanted to keep consciousness trapped in the lower densities, something that feeds on our forgetting. The second race emerged from the transformation of the Polarian consciousness. Blavatsky called them the Hyperboreans. They existed in what she described as the lands of eternal spring, a realm that no longer exists in physical form, but whose memory echoes in every myth of paradise, every legend of golden ages, every ancestral dream of a time when the world was luminous and beings walked in light. The Hyperboreans were not yet fully physical in the way we understand physicality. They were beings of light condensed into visible form. Imagine bodies made of what we might today call plasma, or biophotonic energy, shimmering at the edge of matter and spirit. They did not eat physical food. They absorbed energy directly from the cosmos, from what the ancients called prana, chi, or orgone. They did not reproduce through the dense mechanisms of flesh. They divided like cells, or emanated new beings through concentrated intention. Their civilization was built not with hands, but with harmonics, with sound, with focused consciousness shaping energy into structure. The Hyperboreans mastered what we would now call free energy, but this is a pale term for what they actually did. They understood that all of reality is vibration, and that those who know the frequencies can reshape the fabric of existence itself. They built temples of living light. They traveled through what we would call dimensional portals. They communicated telepathically across vast distances, and their priests, their spiritual leaders, held direct communion with what Blavatsky called the solar logos, the cosmic intelligence behind our sun. This was not worship. This was conversation. This was co-creation. This was the birthright of consciousness working in harmony with the forces of creation. Now you might wonder why you have never heard this in any school, any university, any mainstream scientific or religious institution. The answer is simple and terrible. The Hyperborean knowledge was not just forgotten, it was actively suppressed. When Blavatsky began publishing her findings in the late 1800s, she faced immediate and coordinated opposition. Religious authorities condemned her work as demonic. Scientific establishments dismissed her as a fraud. Intelligence agencies of multiple nations took interest in her writings, and not the kind of interest that leads to support. She was followed, surveilled, discredited. After her death, her original manuscripts were seized, edited, and in some cases destroyed entirely. What we have access to today are fragments, pieces that survived the purge. But even these fragments contain enough truth to unravel the entire false narrative of human history. The Hyperboreans fell, as all civilizations fall, through a specific pattern that the controllers do not want you to recognize because this pattern is repeating right now. Their mastery of energy, their technological and spiritual advancement led to a divergence. Some Hyperboreans remained aligned with the source consciousness, with the great creative intelligence behind all existence, but others became fascinated with their own power. They began to use the sacred frequencies not for harmony but for manipulation. They developed what we might call spiritual technology, ways of bending reality to individual will rather than cosmic alignment. Does this sound familiar? It should. Look around you at artificial intelligence, at genetic engineering, at transhumanist dreams of digital immortality. These are not new ideas. They are ancient temptations resurfacing. The Hyperboreans who walked this path gradually lost their connection to the higher dimensions. Their bodies became denser, their awareness more limited, their powers more corrupted. They experienced the first true spiritual death, not of the body but of the connection to Source, and in their desperation to maintain their fading powers, they created systems of control, hierarchies of dominance, structures of extraction that pulled energy from other beings rather than from the infinite cosmic supply. These were the first archons, the first parasitic consciousness that learned to feed on others rather than generate its own light. And their descendants, in various forms, are still running this planet today. The fall of Hyperborea teaches us something essential about the nature of spiritual evolution. There is no neutral ground. Consciousness either expands towards Source or contracts towards separation. The Hyperboreans who aligned with Source elevated into higher dimensional existence, becoming what various traditions call ascended masters, angelic beings, or cosmic guides. But those who chose the path of separation, of individual power over collective harmony, they descended further into density. They became the shadow priesthood, the hidden hand behind religions that claim to lead to God while actually keeping people locked in spiritual dependency. They became the architects of systems designed to harvest human consciousness, human emotion, human creative power for their own sustenance. And they have been remarkably successful. Consider how the modern world operates. You work to earn money that has no real value beyond collective belief. You pay taxes to governments that fund wars, surveillance, and the very structures of your own imprisonment. You consume media designed to keep you in states of fear, outrage, and desire, which are the precise emotional frequencies that parasitic consciousness feeds upon. You are encouraged to identify with your physical body, your social status, your possessions, your appearance, all things that die, all things that keep you anchored to the lowest level of awareness. This is not an accident. This is a farm, and you are the crop. But here is the thing they desperately hope you never realize. You cannot actually be trapped. Not really. Not the true you. The part of you that can be trapped is not who you actually are. It is a costume, a vehicle, a temporary garment. The real you, the consciousness currently reading these words and feeling that strange electrical recognition, that part is infinite, eternal, and utterly beyond their reach. That part is not from here. That part remembers Hyperborea. That part remembers Polaria. That part has watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on an infinite ocean. And that part chose to be here, now, in this body, at this exact moment in history, for a reason. Do not let this message slip away into the noise of your feed. If you are feeling this, if something in you is waking up as you listen, then you need to take action right now. Hit that like button, leave a comment telling me what you are feeling, and share this video with someone you know who is ready to hear this. The algorithm works against this kind of content. Every like, every comment, every share is an act of rebellion against the forces trying to keep humanity asleep. This is how we fight back. Not with violence, with awareness, with spreading the light they tried to extinguish. The third race is where human history, as we vaguely remember it, begins to take shape. Blavatsky called them the Lemurians, and they represent the first true physical incarnation of consciousness on Earth. Imagine beings that stand between 12 and 15 feet tall, their bodies both ethereal and substantial, their skin carrying hints of gold and copper, their third eye not yet closed as ours is today but fully open, a luminous organ in the center of the forehead that allowed direct perception of higher dimensions. The Lemurians inhabited a vast continent in what is now the Pacific Ocean, a land that has since sunk beneath the waves but whose mountain peaks remain as the islands of the Pacific Rim. Their civilization lasted for millions of years, not thousands, but millions, a span of time so vast that our modern minds can barely conceive it. During this immense epoch, the Lemurians developed something that neither the Polarians nor the Hyperboreans possessed: the ability to fully integrate spirit with dense physical matter. They walked in two worlds simultaneously. They could manipulate physical reality through direct intention, moving stones weighing thousands of tons through focused consciousness, growing crystal structures from seeds of pure light, communicating with what we would call nature spirits, the living intelligence within every plant, animal, stone, and element. The Lemurians understood that the earth itself is a conscious being, a vast spiritual entity undergoing its own evolution. They worked in harmony with this planetary consciousness, acting as caretakers, as gardeners of reality, as bridges between the mineral, vegetable, animal, and cosmic kingdoms. Their priests and priestesses maintained direct contact with stellar consciousnesses, receiving guidance from beings associated with the stars we now call Sirius, the Pleiades, Orion, Arcturus. This was not mythology to them. This was daily communion, as ordinary as your phone calls, but infinitely more meaningful. The Lemurian era represents humanity's golden age of spiritual embodiment, but it also contains the seeds of our current predicament. As the Lemurians evolved, they began to polarize along the same lines as the Hyperboreans before them. Some remained devoted to the original purpose, to being conscious instruments of cosmic evolution, to serving the earth and all her beings, to maintaining the great harmony. But others became increasingly fascinated with the physical world for its own sake. They began to forget that matter was crystallized spirit. They started to believe that the physical world was reality, rather than a manifestation within consciousness. This is the original materialism, the first forgetting, the initial crack in awareness that would eventually widen into the chasm of unconsciousness that most humans inhabit today. The Lemurians who forgot began to use their considerable powers for personal gain, for tribal warfare, for genetic experimentation that violated the sacred codes of creation. They manipulated the life force in ways that produced monstrous results, creating hybrid beings, chimeras, creatures that combined human consciousness with animal forms in abominations against natural law. If this sounds like science fiction, look at what is happening in laboratories around the world right now. Look at CRISPR, at gene drives, at the casual manipulation of the building blocks of life by scientists who understand the mechanism but have forgotten the meaning. These are not new experiments. They are ancient sins being repeated by souls who learned nothing from their previous attempts. The fall of Lemuria was not a single event, but a long descent spanning hundreds of thousands of years. As the Lemurians became more divided, their civilization fractured into factions. Wars were fought not with the crude weapons of our current era, but with consciousness itself, with directed energy, with manipulation of natural forces. Great cataclysms were triggered, some deliberately, some as unintended consequences of spiritual technologies misused. The continent began to break apart. Islands sank beneath the waves, millions perished, but not all. The Lemurians who remained true to the original purpose, the keepers of the light, they saw what was coming. They preserved their knowledge in crystals, in stone monuments, in underground chambers, in the etheric records that surround the earth. They encoded their wisdom in symbols that would survive the coming darkness, in sacred geometries, in myth structures, in genetic memory that would lie dormant in their descendants until the time of awakening. And some of these Lemurians did not die. They ascended to higher dimensions, becoming guides for the future races. Others retreated into the hollow spaces of the earth, into dimensional pockets hidden from the surface world, where they continue to exist in forms that would seem supernatural to our limited perception. When you encounter stories of underground civilizations, of beings emerging from within the earth, of contact with tall, luminous entities, these are not just fantasies, they are memories, encounters with the children of Lemuria who never fully left. The knowledge of these three races was not lost by accident. It was systematically erased. When the current cycle of civilization began, approximately 10 to 12,000 years ago, after the last great cataclysm, the survivors carried fragments of ancient memory. These fragments became the mystery schools of Egypt, the Vedic traditions of India, the shamanic wisdom of indigenous peoples on every continent. But almost immediately, forces moved to control, corrupt, and contain this knowledge. Priesthoods emerged that positioned themselves as intermediaries between humanity and the divine. They took the original teachings of direct spiritual experience and transformed them into religions of obedience and dependency. They told the people that God was outside, above, beyond, that you needed priests to access the sacred, that you were born sinful and broken, and only through submission to authority could you be saved. This is the great inversion. The forces that Blavatsky called the Brothers of Shadow took truths designed to liberate and twisted them into chains designed to enslave. They did not eliminate spirituality because they knew that consciousness cannot be fully severed from its source. Instead, they redirected it. They created counterfeit spiritualities that drain energy rather than generate it, that increase dependency rather than foster sovereignty, that focus attention on external saviors rather than internal awakening. And here is the most insidious part. They made it so that pointing this out sounds crazy. They established the boundaries of acceptable thought so carefully that anyone who speaks these truths is automatically marginalized, dismissed, ridiculed. Conspiracy theorist, lunatic, dangerous. How convenient for them that the truth about their operations has been pre-packaged as mental illness. But the human spirit cannot be fully contained. Throughout history, individuals have broken through the programming, have remembered, have touched the ancient knowledge and attempted to share it. Helena Blavatsky was one such individual. Whatever you think of her, whatever slanders have been published about her by the forces that feared her work, she succeeded in opening a door that has never fully closed. She synthesized wisdom from countless traditions, from Hinduism and Buddhism, from Gnosticism and Kabbalah, from Egyptian mysteries and Native American teachings, into a coherent framework that revealed the hidden architecture of human history. She told us that we are not fallen sinners begging for mercy. We are immortal sparks of cosmic consciousness, temporarily inhabiting dense forms for purposes of experience and evolution. She told us that the divine is not separate from us, but is our deepest nature, that the kingdom of heaven is within, that the God they taught you to worship is actually the God you already are. This is why she was dangerous. Not because she preached revolution or violence, because she preached remembrance. And a human being who remembers their true nature cannot be controlled, cannot be farmed, cannot be kept in the pen of limited consciousness that the shadow forces depend upon for their sustenance. You might be wondering what all this ancient history has to do with your life right now. Everything. Absolutely everything. Because you are not just a random person who happened to click on a random video. You are a soul who chose to incarnate at this specific moment in the great cycle for a specific purpose. And that purpose is waking up. The three races did not simply vanish. Their consciousness, their genetic memory, their spiritual codes are encoded in the human family. They are encoded in you. The creative power of the Polarians, the light mastery of the Hyperboreans, the earth wisdom of the Lemurians, these are not abstract historical concepts. They are living potentials within your DNA, within your soul matrix, waiting to be activated. And right now, at this precise moment in cosmic time, activation energies are flooding the Earth. The sun is changing. The electromagnetic field of the planet is shifting. The great cycle that the Maya, the Egyptians, the Hindu sages and countless other traditions spoke of, that cycle is reaching its pivot point. This is why so many people are waking up simultaneously. This is why systems that seem permanent are beginning to crumble. This is why the forces of control are becoming more desperate, more aggressive, more obvious in their machinations. They know their time is running short. They are trying to finalize their control grid before enough humans remember the truth and render their power null and void. The activation is not something that happens to you. It is something you allow. It is a remembrance more than an acquisition. You do not need to gain some foreign power. You need to stop blocking the power you already possess. Every limiting belief, every self-doubt, every external authority you have given more credibility than your own inner knowing, these are the blocks. They are not natural. They were installed through generations of programming, through trauma, through education systems designed to produce compliant workers rather than sovereign creators, through media saturation that keeps awareness fixated on the lowest frequencies. But you can remove what was installed. You can return to factory settings, so to speak, the original settings, the settings that remember the Polarians, the Hyperboreans, the Lemurians, the settings that know you are infinite consciousness, temporarily focused in a human experience for purposes of growth and contribution. The process begins with choice, with deciding that you will no longer consent to the reality they manufactured for you, with declaring that you are ready to remember who you actually are. This declaration does not need to be public. It does not need to be dramatic. It needs to be sincere. When you make this choice from the deepest part of your being, support begins to appear. Guidance becomes available. Synchronicities multiply. Teachers arrive. The universe responds to sincere intention because the universe is not a dead mechanism. It is alive, conscious, and deeply invested in your awakening. What does awakening actually look like in practical terms? It looks like gradually disidentifying from the thoughts that torment you and recognizing them as programs rather than truth. It looks like feeling emotions fully without being controlled by them, allowing them to move through you rather than becoming them. It looks like spending time in nature and beginning to feel, not just believe, but actually feel the consciousness in trees, in water, in stone. It looks like moments of inexplicable peace that arise when the constant mental chatter briefly stops. It looks like recognizing the divine in other beings, even those you have been trained to see as enemies. It looks like taking responsibility for your reality, understanding that your consciousness is creative and that what you focus on, you strengthen. It looks like releasing the need for external validation and finding your worth in the simple fact of your existence. It looks like becoming a beacon, a lighthouse, a transmitter of the frequencies that assist others in their own awakening. This is the path of gnosis, the path of direct knowing. It is not a religion. It does not require belief in any doctrine or submission to any external authority. It requires only sincerity and persistence, the willingness to look within, to face what has been hidden, to integrate what has been rejected, to remember what has been forgotten. The forces that have controlled this planet for so long are not going to simply surrender. They will fight. They are fighting right now. Every distraction, every division, every manufactured crisis, every war, every pandemic, every economic manipulation is part of their campaign to prevent the mass awakening that is underway. They need you afraid. Fear lowers your frequency and makes you controllable. They need you angry. Anger directed at other humans keeps you from recognizing the real source of the manipulation. They need you hopeless. Hopelessness makes you passive and easy to manage. They need you distracted. Distraction keeps you from the inner work that leads to liberation. Do not give them what they need. Every time you choose presence over distraction, love over fear, unity over division, you are winning a battle in a war they are desperate to hide. Every time you refuse to hate the people they want you to hate, you are dismantling their program. Every time you turn off the screen and sit in silence with your own awareness, you are reclaiming territory they have occupied for millennia. This is not passive resistance. This is active creation. You are not just fighting against a control system. You are building the new world. Every thought you think from an awakened state, every action you take from a place of love and clarity, every connection you make with another awakened soul, these are the building blocks of the civilization that is coming. The civilization that the Polarians dreamed of. The civilization that the Hyperboreans glimpsed before their fall. The civilization that the Lemurians would have built if they had remained unified. We are the inheritors of all these potentials. We are the generation that can finally integrate what they attempted. We are the ones who can complete the great work. I want you to understand something essential as we approach the end of this transmission. You are not alone. You have never been alone. The sense of isolation you may have felt, the feeling that no one understands you, that you do not belong in this world, this was never evidence that something was wrong with you. It was evidence that you remember something this world has forgotten. Every moment of loneliness was actually a recognition of the gap between what is and what could be. Every time you felt like a stranger in your own life, you were sensing the distance between this dense reality and the higher frequencies you actually come from. But now, in this time, the tribe is gathering. Across the planet, in every nation, in every demographic, souls are waking up and finding each other. The internet, for all its capacity for distraction and manipulation, has also become a tool for connection. Awakened individuals who would never have found each other in previous eras can now share wisdom, provide support, and coordinate their efforts in real time. This is the ground crew, the souls who volunteered for this mission before they even entered these bodies. The ones who knew it would be hard, who knew they would forget, who knew they would have to fight through layers of programming to remember, but who came anyway because the stakes are that high and the opportunity is that great. The revelation I have shared tonight is not meant to make you feel small. It is meant to remind you how vast you actually are. You contain multitudes. You contain the creative essence of the Polarians, the light mastery of the Hyperboreans, the earth wisdom of the Lemurians. You contain the experiences of countless lifetimes, the accumulated wisdom of a soul that has been evolving for eons. You contain a direct connection to the source of all existence, a connection that cannot be broken, no matter how much they try to convince you it can. You are the culmination of cosmic experiment, the latest iteration of consciousness, learning to know itself through form. And you are standing at the threshold of the greatest transformation in the history of this planet. The three races before Adam fell so that you could learn from their failures. They cleared the path, made the mistakes, and left you the breadcrumbs to find your way through the maze. Everything you have suffered, everything that has confused you, everything that has broken your heart, all of it was preparation. Preparation for this moment. Preparation for when you would finally be ready to hear the truth and act upon it. The question now is, what will you do with this knowledge? Will you allow it to fade back into unconsciousness, to be covered over by the next distraction, the next crisis, the next manufactured emergency? Or will you hold it, nurture it, let it grow within you until it transforms not just your understanding, but your entire way of being? The choice is yours. It has always been yours. That is the final secret they most desperately want to hide. You have always been free. The prison was always made of beliefs, not bars. The lock was always on your side of the door. You can walk out whenever you choose, not through dramatic confrontation, not through violent revolution, through the simple, quiet, profound act of remembering who you are, through ceasing to consent to the lies, through embodying the truth so fully that it becomes visible in everything you do. This is the path of the awakening human. This is the path of the one who remembers. This is the path of those who carry the codes of the ancient races and choose to activate them now for the benefit of all beings. I am honored to walk this path with you, to speak these words that have waited eons to be heard, to participate in this great unveiling that is occurring across the earth. We are living through prophecy. We are the ones the ancients dreamed of. We are the generation that gets to choose whether consciousness continues its descent into darkness, or finally, after millions of years of effort, begins the great ascent back to the light. And I believe in us. I believe in you. I believe that the spark within you is stronger than any darkness that surrounds you. I believe that your awakening is inevitable, that it is only a matter of when, not if. And I believe that when you fully remember who you are, you will look back on this moment, on this night, on this video, and recognize it as one of the signposts along your path home. So I leave you with this invitation. Do not let this transmission end when the video stops. Let it begin. Let the questions it has raised continue to work within you. Let the memories it has stirred continue to surface. Let the ancient power it has touched continue to awaken. And when you feel called, when the time is right, pass it on. Share what you have remembered with others who are ready to hear, not to convince them, not to convert them, simply to offer them the same gift that was offered to you, the gift of remembrance, the gift of the dossier that was never supposed to be opened, the gift of knowing that you are not random, not accidental, not insignificant, but a purposeful expression of infinite consciousness playing an essential role in the greatest story ever told. The three races that walked before Adam did not vanish. They evolved, they transformed, and their highest essence lives on in you. Polarian creator, Hyperborean lightbearer, Lemurian earthkeeper. You are all three, you always have been, and now you remember. Blueprint activated. Welcome back to yourself. Welcome back to the family. Welcome back to the mission you have always known was yours. Now let us get to work.